Welcome to the Transforming Trauma podcast. Transforming Trauma is presented by the Complex Trauma Training Center. I'm your host, Emily Ruth, and I'm so glad you've joined us today. Hi, Transforming Trauma listeners. If you're a mental health professional working with complex trauma and are interested in learning the neuroaffective relational model, we're excited to share with you about our upcoming NARM therapist trainings. The NARM therapist training is an advanced clinical training designed for licensed mental health professionals, current mental health graduate students, and active clinical interns and trainees, where you will get trained in a comprehensive developmental framework and clinical approach for resolving the long-term impacts of ACEs and CPTSD. As you are learning and integrating NARM, you will receive individualized support from a team of skilled, passionate, and supportive trainers, led by faculty members Brad Kammer, Stephanie Klein, and Marsha Black. If you're working in the field of complex trauma, we encourage you to register now to get trained in NARM. For more information and to reserve your spot, please visit complextraumatrainingcenter.com. And now for our interview. Samantha Garcia Pennell, Manager of Workforce Partnerships at Arouet Foundation, is dedicated to empowering others by sharing her journey and encouraging them to embrace their unique strengths. With more than a decade of experience in training, she specializes in helping individuals rebrand themselves through education and support. Samantha holds a bachelor's degree in career and technical education from Northern Arizona University, which she applies to create strategic pathways for individuals transitioning from incarceration back into their communities. Her passion lies in nonprofit work, where she is committed to providing services that open doors for women impacted by the criminal justice system, fostering connections, and supporting their successful reintegration into society. Please enjoy my conversation with Samantha Garcia Pennell. All right, I am sitting here with Samantha Garcia Pennell. It's so great to have you. Welcome to Transforming Trauma.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this conversation for a few months now and really excited to hear more about your work in the Arouet organization and also just to hear more about your personal experience. So I'd love to first start by asking you what you would like our listeners to walk away from our conversation with today.
Thanks, Emily. So I would say the biggest thing that I really look forward to the listeners knowing out there, I want to personalize and humanize complex trauma. I want people to understand that even though someone has either experienced or is currently experiencing trauma, that you can navigate through it and that we are humans living the human experience and we're all in a place in our lives, but you can make it through.
Beautiful. It's a perfect place to start. I really appreciate you naming that. So if we could begin exploring a little bit about what your background is, where you come from, how did you come to the work that you're doing?
Yes, so I came into the Arouet program. I've been working there for about 3.5 years, coming up on 4 years, and I originally came into the organization as a participant. So prior to my release from prison, I was offered the Arouet program. And then as I went through the program, I fell in love with the mission, and I was given not only tactical skills of coming home and staying home, but I also learned so much about myself, how to have a different mindset, how to prepare and determine how I really wanted to show up in the world. And when I came home, after telling Allison many, many times that I was going to work for her, it came to fruition about a year after I had been home. And I originally came into the organization to build a mentorship program. And I built the mentorship program really around my own personal experience when I came home. I received my close friend. She was a mentor to me, and everything she showed me was something that I used to replicate the program. So women helping women identify what their versions of success were and to help them navigate it. And the mentorship program has been building since then. And then I've fallen into other roles where we're going out into the community, working with businesses to understand what truly fair chance means and to bring more opportunities to our women to find employment. There's just so many different services that Arouet provides. employment coaching, financial coaching, mentorship. We have our training academy where people learn technical skills so that they can get that next job. And so there's just so many things that Arouet provides to the community in which we serve that it's a mission, and it drives me and it brings me so much joy.
I'm feeling so touched as you're talking about this. I mean, you're naming, just the incredible resource that Arouet is to women who are exiting a system that is, I'm just going to say what I think. I imagine it's very traumatic. And so I'm really appreciating you naming all of these pieces, and also that you have the lived experience of walking through that process. So thank you for naming all of that, what Arouet offers and part of your experience. I'm wondering if you can share just a little bit, because you said something, I don't remember how you said it, but it brought up for me this piece around like the sister wound, and like how often women we don't support each other in the ways that I'm hearing you name, like women really helping women coming out of this. So I wonder if you can just talk a little bit more about that and what your experience was in that mentor that you had and what helped you create this program.
So that's always been a curiosity to me, that we as a society do not foster that whole mentality of women supporting women. When I came to the organization and I was given the mentor that I was given, and she's a friend also, but it was just the true bond. And something strange that happens in the prison and in the justice system, it seems that we have to build a community. And because it's a micro population, right, when you're inside. And so you have to build community in the way in which you can. And so I think it's a weird thing that happens in there, and you build that sisterhood, you build those connections, and you build those sometimes lifelong friendships in such a harsh land and such a harsh community, or you would believe to be a harsh community. But being part of Arouet and having the community, because we only serve women, so it's women supporting women. And so it's this explosion of community that we build because we are able to focus on only women. So that we build it up in turn.
I love that. And I appreciate you naming. So when you're in that traumatic environment together, that you have to kind of have each other's backs. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you find people who are of like minds. So there's some bad choices that you can make. But for the most part, if you are showing up in the way that you want to be and you want to perpetuate that when you go home, you attract those people. So it's that law of attraction. You're attracting who you are at that moment. And so you build each other up, you celebrate each other's growth and the changes that you want to put forth in the world.
I love that. So you were connected with this mentor, this friend. She's become a friend to you.
Oh, yeah.
And what was that experience like for you? I wonder if you could share.
Yes. So we became friends inside, and we were both at that point of growth. So we worked for a different organization while we were inside, and her and I were we wanted something different. That's all we knew, is we wanted something different when we came home. And she was released a few years prior to my release. So she got to go home and start living her life and showing up and doing the things that she wanted to do, that she had talked about the whole time before she had left. And so she went before me, and it always brings tears to my eyes. But when I was getting ready to be released, she offered to be my mentor and open up her house to me, and giving me a start where I didn't have any, because I had lost all my family prior to going inside. So I was coming out to a completely fresh slate, completely unknown. And she was kind of like that calm in the middle of the storm. And she's one of the leaders at Arouet. And so she kind of took me under her wing and showed me that it was possible, that I had someone. And I honestly don't know where I would have landed or what I would have done without that. And so that's why I believe that mentorship is so important, is because you have that person, you have that calm in the storm, and it's special. It's a special
Yeah.
connection that you build.
I appreciate you even just naming that you, every time you share that part of your experience, that you have emotion come up because it's so touching. And I felt that too for myself, just thinking about what that meant for you and how I think what I'm hearing you name is like for women, it can really change the trajectory of the direction that you go if you have that support. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, most of us don't have a positive, right? That we obviously came from pretty bad situations. You wouldn't be in the justice system if you everything was rainbows and butterflies, right?
Hmm.
So, whatever traumas and whatever symptoms brought you to where you're involved with justice system, really, when you're getting ready to go home, there's a huge amount of fear that you're going to have to go back to the same situations, the same people, the same. And if you have that one light and that one person on the right side in what you vision as success, then you can latch on to that. Because I think that was a huge contributing factor as to why it took me so long to finally get out of the justice system, is because I just didn't know any better. I just didn't have any solid connection on the right side of community. So just to even have one person to believe in me when I wasn't sure if I could believe in myself, because it was so alarmingly new to me, it made a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that you're saying that, or at least something that it's landing for me, or that I think I'm hearing you say is people don't just end up in prison on a random Tuesday. There's a lot that happens leading up to that experience. Would you be open to sharing anything of what kinds of things might bring someone to that experience? The kind of complex trauma. I mean, that's really what we're talking about.
Yes, for me specifically, it was a lifetime of traumas. So, for me, it started when I was a kid, when my formative years. So, I was I was molested for a few years by a family, and I dealt with the normal things of divorce. And my mom was addicted in her own struggles, so there was a lot of neglect going on. And that was just the first 8 years. So there's a huge amount of traumas. And of course, my story is my own, but I truly believe that in the being part of the justice system, there are so many symptoms, and justice system or prison or jail or whatever are just symptoms of a much deeper seated problem, which are those complex traumas. For me, I could go into endless amounts of trauma. So once I got through that, my father took over custody of me, but he was the epitome of a Spanish male born in the 20s. So
Mm.
it was very super, he expected everything from me when I was completely broken on the inside. And so I didn't know how to show up in that perfect sense. So when I got into my teenage years, I pretty much lost it. And so I started seeking and doing behaviors that were more a reflection of those initial traumas. And those struggles went on through my whole teens. I didn't actually find drugs until my 20s. And then when I found drugs in my 20s was because I think there was a lot of unresolved, like there was the depression, the chemical imbalances, all of those things. And so I was just seeking for some sort of solution. And I found that temporarily in drugs.
Mm.
But the consequence of doing drugs is then you get yourself in front of more bad people. And, that are, like I said, who you are at that moment is who you attract. And so
Yeah.
fell into that community.
Can we pause for just a second? Because you're saying something so important here that I really am hoping listeners can hear. I don't remember how you said it, but in essence, drugs were a solution for you. And all of our strategies, and no matter what the complex trauma is, these adaptations, these things that we do, these behaviors that we do are initially solutions. And I'm really hoping people can hear that all of the ways that you were trying to survive initially were solutions for you. It makes so much sense to me. So I just wanted to make sure listeners heard that part of what you said, because that's really important to understand how folks find themselves in these different situations. We just can't judge from the behavior. You're really speaking to why that behavior emerged, and that's really, really important.
I agree. And if for me, it was a solution that worked for the time being because I did not know of any other solutions.
Mm-hmm.
I was just seeking for whatever made it stop hurting.
Right. Yeah.
And back when I was going through it, mental health was not something that you openly spoke about. You were broken if you needed any kind of psychotherapy. If you were back then, if you needed to take medication for depression or bipolar or any of those things, then you were this
Mm.
other,
Mm-hmm.
and so I spent a lot of years feeling like an other and not normal because I needed those things.
Yeah.
So that just led me into drug use. I think one of the biggest traumas that really sent me over the edge and spiraled me out of what I believed at the time anything that I could survive was the loss of my first child.
Mm.
She passed away from SIDS when she was 8 months old. And so whatever gifts I felt that the universe were giving me by allowing me to carry this child was taken away, in my eyes, in my mind's eye, and that I wasn't good enough. And so that created probably the biggest spiral for me where I just pretty much gave up. I I didn't see any way out of what I was at the moment.
Sam, again, I'm appreciating your willingness to be vulnerable and share so openly the loss of a child, that level of grief. I know we've had others on the podcast who have also talked about the loss of a child or a loved one and how deeply that grief experience can impact us, especially if there's no support. And I'm just hearing in what you're saying, there wasn't a level of support to really help you navigate through that process.
No.
Yeah.
My father, he was processing his own grief at the moment. And because I was struggling during that time of having my daughter, he blamed me. His exact words to me, he was like, if you weren't so messed up on drugs, you would still have a bouncing baby girl today. And those words for me were the moment that I broke. And I couldn't find my way out of that. And I know it until lots of therapy, lots of therapy, but to understand that he was processing his grief in his own way, but it did its damage.
Mm. So you're saying that experience and also the lack of support and lack of understanding of those close around you really impacted you in a deep way. And that led you to, sounds like, where you ended up.
Correct. And in and out of prison, my first time in shortly after she passed. I was in jail on my way to prison 9 days after she passed. So the society at large they didn't know how to support, and the only thing that they could do was put me in jail. And I was it was rough. So beyond that, I would also encourage your listeners, especially anybody that works with women I don't think that there's enough to be known about women and after childbirth. And I know that there's been studies, like the postpartum depression versus psychosis versus all of those different things. I think that there's so much that we don't know and we don't appreciate for new mothers. After I lost after I lost Caitlin, I was gifted with more, but each subsequent child, the depression, just the chemicals, the trauma, the all of the things were just exacerbated every single time, a little bit worse every single time. And again, I was supposed to be happy because I just had a child,
Mm.
and the child is getting all the attention, and and you're just kind of lost over here becoming this new mother. And that also caused many, many problems in my life
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, again, you're speaking just some really important pieces here that I do hope that every drop that you're putting in the bucket, it makes a difference. It really does matter because folks need to hear these are really tender times in a human's life, in a woman's life, just after having given birth, that our bodies change, we need more support than is often there. And I just really appreciate you naming that. So you found that whole process that you said you were in and out of prison from that point. And at some point, you had this new mentor that you mentioned. I don't know how long that space was. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so I had been going in and out of prison since the 90s. So I found my first jaunt into the criminal justice system when I was 16. And like I said, it was again symptoms of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So each interaction, they kept getting worse and worse until I finally found myself in prison this last time for 10 years. So when I was sitting in county jail for this final stint that I did, I guess you could call it, I knew that personally that it was the buck stops here. This is the end of the road. So it's either A, I choose to give up, or B, I choose to completely remake myself
Mm.
because I couldn't continue. I was done. There was nothing left in the tank. I was bankrupt emotionally,
Mm.
mentally, physically, everything. I was just done. And so luckily I had a supportive person who was my cellmate inside of the county jail, and she motivated me. She was like, listen, she's like, you're going to have a solid chunk of time right now, and you can literally be anybody you choose to be when you come home. Nobody's going to know you. You're going to just clean slate. Here you go. Who is Samantha? Who do you
Mm.
want her to be?
Mm-hmm.
So it gave me that little baby light. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to completely give up because at some point my dream is to reconnect with my kiddos and, have a happy and successful life. And so, okay, here we go. So I sat down with myself like the very first 5 because there is not a lot of mental health care inside. So I had to sit down with myself, and I did that. I dismantled all of that grief, all of that pain, all of those traumas. I kind of unpacked them and kind of found where I could be accountable for some of the things that I did, right? So in part of my addiction, I had done trauma to other people because of my choice in how I had to make money. And
Mm.
so I had to find my accountability where I could find it, but then also put the other parts to bed.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and in the course of that is when I met Brandy, my mentor, and her and I, we were both like at this point, we were at that point of growth, and we ended up in similar job roles. And so we were working our tail feathers off and doing different things and shooting for the moon and trying to figure out where we were going to be when we came home. So that's where the friendship began, and then it just fostered from there when I came home. And we still work together today doing the same mission. And she's an amazing asset for Arouet and one of the major leaders of the organization.
This is so beautiful. I'm feeling so inspired right now. You're naming that first cellmate you said. What was the question she asked? Who is it that Sam wants to be? Or like you get to decide. You get to
Right.
decide who you want to be from this point going forward. Like, what a beautiful question to get curious about what's actually underneath all of these behaviors, all of these strategies to survive. You had to survive in all these ways. Like you said, addictions are a solution in the very beginning. And so what's underneath that? And I love that you got curious with yourself. You sat yourself down and got curious about what was underneath all that. That's so beautiful. And then you moved forward in a way that you decided to make something different with this friend, this mentor, making something different with your life and shooting for the moon. I think I heard you say that.
Right.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And since coming home, it's all just been being open to something else, right? And getting out of my own way. And it's not to say that it isn't easy all the time. And it's more challenging showing up for myself. And without the support of, I've learned to be okay with accepting support from my therapist and making sure that I'm addressing my psychotherapy and being okay with taking some medication to help me, right? Knowing that I am not broken because I need support, but it's just another tool. It's another tool to support me being able to be the person that I am.
I love that. Well, can I ask the question, who is the person that you are? What have you discovered about who you are?
Well, that's, I I get asked that a lot.
Yeah, I'm
But,
curious.
um, so I'm empathetic. My hubby says that I'm a caring person. I am someone who shows up for others, and I'm able to pay forward what it was given to me.
Yeah. And I love that you share, we've talked about it a few times now, just like that you knew you were going to work for Allison and you made sure that she knew that you knew you were going to work for her. I mean, I'm just hearing something driving that. Like there was something deep inside that you knew that you were meant to do this, this work with other women and support other women in these really important ways. And I just love that you let yourself, shoot for the moon and dream about that and that you're making all these things come to reality. I just think that's so cool, so inspiring.
Thank you. There's nothing better than seeing another person who has been through a similar situation light up, get excited about what's next for them, and practicing. So a lot of the journey that I did once I figured out how I wanted to show up was practicing. Right? You have to practice in being that different person. And so that always lights me up when I see one of our participants. They're like, oh my gosh, I just did what we talked about and it worked,
That's so
So
cool.
it's always exciting to see them step into their own power and step into their own and celebrate themselves because we have a tendency not to do that. I think that as a population, as the human existence, we don't celebrate ourselves enough. But when you get the chance to see someone light up because they just did something that there was one of their goals, it's magic.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you were saying that, like what felt true for me, at least as I'm thinking about my own life, is when I choose to be in that space of celebration, that I followed through. I did something that I knew I wanted to, something that I knew I had capacity for, that I was capable of. That it like something about that celebration, it's like dwelling in the life force, like this really important part of ourselves that you're just naming something really important. I think that when we follow through, that we can really accept that about ourselves, that we did something. So anyway, that's kind of what came up for me as you were talking about the celebration. Like there's another, I don't know if there's another word for me, but it just feels connected to this life force piece. We need to acknowledge when we've followed through for ourselves. I think that's what I want to say.
Yes, and that it's work. It takes work. My other friend, she is always having to remind me. She's like, you did 50 other things, so let's not hyper focus on the one thing that you didn't get done. Right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's okay, right? You show up, you do the work that you can do, and just because you had 50 things on your to-do list doesn't mean that's a stretch goal, but celebrate the things that you did get done to make sure that you are giving yourself credit for things done instead of beating yourself up about the things that aren't done.
I love that. So you're acknowledging the ways that we sometimes do beat ourselves up, and that there's choice in that. You can choose to beat ourselves up, or we can choose to acknowledge the things that we did accomplish or the things that we stay connected to ourselves around. So
And that's a trauma response in itself, right? We have a tendency to find it easier to beat ourselves up and to stay in that trauma instead of celebrating, because sometimes it's easier to just fall back into those latent behaviors.
Well, and I'm wondering too, just as you're talking about that, like it gets me curious. In the past, again, I'll just speak for myself. Like in the past, I think about celebration can feel dangerous sometimes. Like, to celebrate, I'm having to let my guard down. I'm also having to not be so hyper vigilant about ways that I might screw up or whatever. So I'm just thinking about it's vulnerable to kind of let ourselves acknowledge ways that we've had our own backs. Like to celebrate can feel a bit vulnerable. So I appreciate you naming that. It's a choice. And what was the other part that you said? To not.
Oh, it's much easier, and it's a trauma response.
Yeah.
When we have those feelings of inadequacy or worth or lack of fill in the blank, it is much easier to pick out those small failings and make them the highlight instead of the low light.
Yeah. So cool that these are all connections that you were making through this whole process, and that you had this mentorship, these friends around you that were supporting you, and that you had Allison and you had Arouet to kind of help you stay true to what you wanted for yourself. So can you talk a little bit more about the work that you're doing now with Arouet? You talked a little bit about what got you there. You told Allison, I'm going to work for you.
Yeah, I told Allison, yes, I was very adamant about it, and I stayed on top of it for a whole year until she let me in. But yeah, we do so many different things, and working for Allison has been an amazing experience. So in working within a nonprofit, you show up where the needs must, right? So you put on whatever hat you need to put on. So whether it's being a financial coach and talking to somebody about their finances or plans or goals, whether it's employment, being in front of people and figuring out what they want to do or now and in their futures. So, and of course, every day you're a mentor, but still continuing to support in that area. Since this year in January, I have had the honor to work under what's called our CASE Academy, which is our training academy, Career Assessment Skill Enhancement Academy, where we provide an opportunity for technical skills. So whether it's in IT or technology, or we also just launched our first trades program. So I have been working under that department, working with getting back to basics and working with the participants. So I have been doing employment coaching and mentoring and really just being able to be in front of our women, which is how it started. And so it's been an absolute pleasure to be back in front of them all of the time.
Wow. Yeah, I'm just taking a moment to just appreciate like all of how you're showing up. Like these are all ways that you supported yourself, and you were supported. You had this beautiful community around you, and Arouet and your mentors, but also how you're using all of those skills that you developed and honed. You're now turning around and supporting other women to do the same. It's just so incredibly beautiful and inspiring.
It's beautiful to be able to come full circle. And there's nothing more magical than being a part of somebody else's success, right? You're not doing the work, but you're helping them to celebrate their own worth and celebrate their successes and walk beside them. That's a big part of what Arouet stands for, is we're not going to do the work, but we will 100% support you as you do the work on yourself. And I think that that's a huge component of the Arouet model, is just supporting others to help them support themselves and become exactly who they were destined to be from the beginning, prior to their missteps or symptoms that brought them into the justice system.
I love it. So my mind is going to two places now. And listeners, if they've heard our previous episode with Allison Rapping, I asked her this question too. So I'm curious from your perspective in the organization, if there's anything that you might add. But I'm curious if folks are listening to this, maybe they're a mental health professional, or maybe they know someone who could use these resources that you're talking about. How might folks be supportive? How can they help bring Arouet's mission to maybe their specific situation? And maybe they're local to Arizona, but maybe they're not. I'm just curious what you might say in terms of how other folks can kind of help that mission.
Yeah. So if it's anybody on, outside looking to support Arouet and Arouet's mission, I mean, we are a true nonprofit. There's no two ways about it. We can't do the mission if we can't keep the doors open. So if you're an employer and you're looking to either support Fair Chance, what I mean by Fair Chance is it's just giving somebody an opportunity to work for the organization. If there's a job out there that you need to fill, give someone a chance who's one of our participants. You'll never find a more trustworthy, dedicated employee. I mean, if I can even show a part of it, right? When somebody gives you a chance, they're somebody special and they'll stay with it. So if you're an employer, give our women a shot. If you are an organization that wants to look towards providing financially towards the mission, whether it's you want to fund part of our Case Academy, you want to help us be able to support more women. The financial aspect is always a big chunk of nonprofit work. So come to one of our events, help sponsor one of our events, do a reentry simulation so that you can show others what it's like for people coming home, just to get an idea.
Can you speak to what a reentry simulation is for anyone who might not know?
Yes. So a reentry simulation is where we go into said place, whoever is sponsoring the event. What we do is we help the participants. So it's like a community event. We've done it for large corporations. We've done it for churches. We just did it for a major health plan. So what we do is the participants come and they become a whole different identity. And it's a week over week experience. So for 4 weeks, you become this other person who has been impacted by the criminal justice system. And what you are supposed to do is try and successfully reenter society after being inside for varying reasons. And sometimes you're released with $500. Sometimes you're released with nothing. Sometimes you're released with your identification to be able to get a job. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're, full living situations, you name it, you got it. So we have everybody experiencing something different. And the tables are all different things in the public that you have to do. So 1 week you have to see your parole or probation officer. You have to check in and you have to check in with work. You have to feed yourself. You have to do all of the UAs or urinalysis or whatever. There's the whole laundry list of things that somebody coming home has to do. And week over week, and then we debrief and then you do the next week. And the unique part of Arouet's reentry simulation is you will always have people who are doing the tables as justice impacted. So they can speak to their own personal experience of how they re-entered. So very cool experience.
Wow. I had a vague idea of what it was. I'd heard about it, but I hadn't, the way you're describing it, it's landing a little deeper of what that process is actually like. You're giving someone a taste of what it's like to be exiting the justice system and all of the boulders in your way of succeeding and creating a life that you really would want. I imagine that's very impactful and that people walk away with maybe another deeper layer of understanding.
Absolutely.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And then finally, if you are impacted by the criminal justice system in any way, Arouet is here for you. If you are struggling to find work, you're struggling to make heads or tails of what you want as your goals, whether it be financial, employment, whatever. If you just need an ear, we are always there for you. We have connections to a lot of community resources. And if it's not something that we as an organization do, we will knock on doors until we find who can support you. So
That's incredible. And I'm curious if folks who are listening to this, they're not local to the Arizona, Phoenix area. Maybe they live, outside of the state or something. I'm curious if they were to reach out to Arouet, do you have any sort of partnerships or understanding of other organizations in other areas? Would it be supportive for someone who's maybe not in Arizona to make a call?
yeah, if there's other organizations who are in this reentry space, we would love to sit down. We've sat down with, different organizations or other nonprofits in other states, and we've sat down and brainstormed like, okay, what are you doing that's working for you? What are we doing that's working for us? We would love to extend our partnership across state lines. We've worked with government agencies on multiple occasions that are working on trying to define what their reentry programs look like. Kind of a strange fact, in Arizona, we spend billions of dollars on the punitive system, but we spend $0 on reentry. So the work that we're doing is very on the outside of what's typically funded, but we are looking to build connections wherever we can.
Beautiful. So if someone who's been impacted by the justice system is looking for support, if they're outside of Arizona, you might have some connections with someone that could be supportive to them in another state or something. You might be able to direct them.
Yeah, we'll help you do the research.
Cool. Amazing. Sam, I'm just feeling so touched and moved by, again, your willingness to share your experience, how you've worked so hard to overcome so much. And I just really am moved by your story and your willingness to share and to help others. So thank you for taking the time today.
Thanks, Emily. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode. To find more information about our guest, check the show notes or visit us at complextraumatrainingcenter.com/transforming trauma. You can also connect with us in other ways. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. As a mental health professional, your commitment to healing and growth inspires us. We at the Complex Trauma Training Center are committed to supporting you in your well-being and success. That's why we're honored to invite you to our Space Program 2025, an inner development program of support and self-discovery for therapists on the personal, interpersonal, and transpersonal levels. This interactive experiential learning program is designed to support self-care and self-discovery for therapists, exploring internally, relationally, and transpersonally. CTTC faculty will welcome you into a professional community of therapists that are seeking to create greater effectiveness and resilience in our professional lives. As CTTC faculty Brad Kammer says, the intent is that this program will help us not only become more effective therapists, but also love our work more. Please visit complextraumatrainingcenter.com and secure your spot in the 2025 Space Program. Thanks to Andrea Klunder and the Creative Imposter Studios for producing and editing, to Elisa Sponseller for our album art, and to Brad Kammer for the creation of this podcast. We look forward to building community and connection with you and changing the world by transforming trauma.